Arizona Wildlife Views, brought to you by the sale of hunting and fishing licenses and the Heritage Fund, lottery dollars working for wildlife. Some projects made possible by the Sport Fish and Wildlife Restoration Fund.
Welcome to Arizona Wildlife Views. I'm Jim Paxon. Tonight we'll take you on a wildlife rescue mission following the Monument Fire in southern Arizona. Then Bass Pro Michael Mcfarland will give us another great fishing tip. But first, let's go up the North Kaibab Plateau, where hunters, biologists, and the public are working to save the endangered California condor.
In the later months of the year, the North Kaibab Plateau is a distant and unique landscape with limited human activity. A few hardy sightseers drawn here by the opportunity to get a private view of the Grand Canyon, or some hunters lucky enough to draw a mule deer tag in this prized area, are about all you'll run into. But if you are one of those deer hunters, there's a good chance you'll also run into someone like Kathy Sullivan.
So if there's any way your camp mechanic can help you here, bring out the gut pile. I've got a heavy-duty bag for you. And to reach as many hunters as we have, I actually get some help during these hunts. And Game and Fish tries to have about one person out for every 200 hunters. And we think we get about 80% contact with the hunters in the field. So we really end up talking to the most of the hunters. And that is certainly proven when everyone at the check station tells me almost every hunter that has come through has either met one of us in the field or gotten the flyer in their camp, and most of them have talked to me over the years because I've been doing this for 6 years. So I certainly have gotten a relationship with some of these hunters.
Kathy is the California Condor project coordinator for Arizona Game and Fish. And her job is to educate hunters on the North Kaibab about how they can help protect the California condor. The condor had all but vanished in North America until the last group of wild birds was captured in 1987 and a breeding program developed. They began releasing condors back into Arizona in 1996 along the Vermilion Cliffs, just south of the Utah border.
Well, the Kaibab Plateau is one of the key foraging areas for our condors during the hunting season in particular. They have figured out when the hunting season is, so they all fly to this area to forage on the wounding lost animals and more notably probably the gut piles that are left in the field. They're actually getting lead fragments from those gut piles, and lead poisoning has become their #1 cause of death. We've had 19 confirmed cases of mortality from lead poisoning in the condors. We only have 71 in Arizona right now, so it's a significant mortality factor and one that we need to work on reducing.
The California condor is one of the most endangered birds in the world. So to assist in their recovery, Arizona Game and Fish began a voluntary program, which offers Kaibab and Arizona Strip mule deer tag holders a free box of non-lead ammunition. These copper bullets don't fragment upon impact the way lead bullets do, making the remains that these scavenging birds eat much safer for them. Kathy's mission is to make sure every hunter in the area is aware of the program.
If I go into a camp and the hunters are there, I introduce myself, let them know who I am, and I ask them if they were able to take advantage of the free ammo program. If they are using the non-lead ammo, I thank them and explain to them again why that is helping, and ask them or tell them that they just leave the gut pile in the field. It's great food for the condors. The condors are pretty much dependent on the hunting season as a food source, so they're actually helping with condor recovery by using the non-lead ammo and leaving the gut pile in the field.
Hunters who are still using lead ammunition are given a large trash bag and asked to pack up the gut pile and take it to the check station, where an extra incentive is waiting for them.
It's mandatory checkout, so the hunters have to go through the check station anyways if they're on the Kaibab. So if they bring in their gut pile, after we do everything with the deer, the measurements and possibly the CWD sampling, we will collect the gut pile from them and take all their information, including their phone number. Then at the end of the hunting season in December, I do a random draw and I get to call the people that won the raffle. There's 3 prizes, and I get to call them with a Christmas present with a Cabela's gift card, which was donated by the Peregrine Fund.
During her travels, Kathy talks to a lot of people on the Kaibab. Those who have gotten their deer.
That's good. Is this one of your first deer tags, or you've been hunting a while? Or?
This is my third deer.
Third deer. Okay,
Yep.
awesome. Great.
And those who are still hunting.
Did you happen to get the free non-lead ammo from Game and Fish by any chance? Yeah. For the hunt? You both did. Great. Well, thank you very much.
And she approaches each with the same enthusiasm and good humor.
Let me sell this the right way.
Throw rocks at it? That'll work for me. It's harsh language and sharp language and big rocks.
Okay, so there are condors out here.
The hunters who choose to use non-lead ammunition do so voluntarily, so it's important to Kathy that she contact as many of them as possible and get them on board with the program.
So the condor population in Arizona is a 10J population, and that's a special rule of the Endangered Species Act, so it's actually an experimental population. And what that means is land management practices will not be changed because of this condor program. So everything we do is on voluntary effort. So that's why Game and Fish, and working with our partners like the Peregrine Fund, is working so hardly to educate hunters and get them involved in this process, and it's worked really, really well over the last few years.
Hunter Scott Lips from Buckeye and his group are going to use copper bullets for the first time on this mule deer hunt. So far, they are happy with the results.
It shoots very well as far as compared to the practice ammo. Her gun didn't need to be adjusted at all. She shoots a 100 grain bullet. My gun had to be adjusted just a little bit. Shoots a little bit lower, a little bit to the left, but that was no problem. We adjusted for that and we were okay.
So just to show you how successful this program has been with getting hunter participation, before we started the free ammo program, we surveyed hunters up here, and less than 5% of them were using the non-lead ammo. The first year of the program in 2005, that increased to 50% of the hunters. Now, for the last 4 years of the program, we have had 85% participation or better, and this is all a voluntary program. So it's been very, very successful. Now we're trying to extend this program up into Utah, because what we're finding is the birds have discovered the hunting season in Utah too, and they are certainly getting lead poisoning from up there. So until we have the same level of participation from hunts up there, we're probably not going to see a significant decrease in condor lead poisoning, and that is our goal. So our focus is to continue in Arizona and extend the program into Utah.
The California Condor is the largest land bird in North America, with a wingspan of up to 9.5 feet. They can weigh up to 25 pounds and have been known to travel more than 100 miles a day in search of food. In prehistoric times, they ranged from Mexico to Canada, but now only 2 recovered populations remain, one in Arizona and one in California, for a total of less than 200 birds in the wild.
Yeah, this is a good faith effort on the part of the department. Really proud to be involved in this effort. It's a proactive conservation effort. Once we realized this was a problem, Game and Fish got right on it and started an education program, and then the free ammo program and the gut pile raffle being an incentive program. Back when we started this in 2005, most hunters hadn't heard of copper bullets. So by showing the hunters these bullets, letting them try them for free, we're finding that most of the hunters really like the bullets, and they are willing to purchase them on their own and use them again in future hunts.
I read the stuff, I guess Kathy, you sent that, right? I read that, and you know, I thought about the condors, and I thought it was so cool that we were trying to save them. And man, we're part of it. We're able to be a contributor to saving those guys, and I didn't see a reason not to do that. You know, this was perfect.
It's early January 2011, and California condors are gathering on the Vermilion Cliffs of northern Arizona. As breeding season starts, these social birds return to the area from which most were first released to the freedom of the skies. Of course, nostalgia isn't what draws condors back to the Vermilion Cliffs. It's a reliable food source, courtesy of the Peregrine Fund's Condor Recovery Team. The team tries to lure the entire Arizona-Utah population of condors to these remote, juniper-dotted cliffs twice a year in an extraordinary effort to capture every single bird and test its blood. Biologists are looking for sick birds, hoping to treat them and perhaps prevent their death.
We're up here today as part of our seasonal trapping and testing, where we handle the birds for several reasons, one of which is to check their transmitters to make sure they have functional batteries and that the transmitters are working. And the other is to do a general health check where we will handle the birds and just see how they're doing and draw blood samples, test their lead levels. If they're not too high, they'll be released back to the wild. If they're high enough to suggest they might be in a little trouble with the lead poisoning, then we'll take them down and treat them.
Sick birds are taken to the barn, a big metal shed that's been modified for use as a Condor ER, not far from the release pen atop the Vermilion Cliffs. Here, biologists use an X-ray machine and other sensitive equipment to further test and treat the birds for lead poisoning. The barn and its equipment were paid for in part by the Arizona Game and Fish Department's Heritage Fund.
So if a bird should show a high blood lead level, then we take them down to our facility and begin treatment. And it's the same treatment used in humans. It's 2 injections a day, except that in humans it's an IV for a 5-day period of calcium EDTA. And what that does, the root word for chelation is chel, and it means claw. And it actually molecularly binds to the lead, and then it can be passed through the kidneys normally as other excrement would.
Most condors that come to the barn undergo 1 round of chelation. Then their blood lead level drops, their overall health improves, and they are returned to the wild. But for a 15-year-old male, number 122, treatment and release won't happen so quickly.
I'd like to say it was more of an unusual case, but unfortunately it's almost a yearly happening where we have a bird that's sick enough the lead begins to paralyze their digestive system. And from my little understanding of the way lead works is it's stored in the body as if it were calcium, and calcium is a major neurotransmitter, and it's utilized as it facilitates other neurotransmitters, so all the communication in the cells. So if lead is stored in those receptor sites where calcium is supposed to be, then it basically dumbs down the system and paralyzes the system. And the first place it reveals itself is in the digestive system. The process of moving food from the crop, which is where when they come into a carcass and they gorge themselves, their food is in a crop. It's a big storage area so they can come in, feed, and get out. And then they go sit somewhere, safe from predation, and allow that food to process through their system. Their digestive tract, their gut, is very small, and so the food is slowly released into the digestive system. Well, when that digestive system becomes paralyzed, that food's no longer passing through. So what happens is that crop full of carrion begins to rot. If we don't get our hands on it, the bird starves to death while continually feeding and doesn't get the benefit of that food and ultimately could die from it if the lead levels are high enough and the paralysis is extensive enough.
The next day, Chris drives Condor 122 south to the Oak Creek Small Animal Facility in Sedona. There the bird will be transferred to Dr. Kathy Orr of the Liberty Wildlife Rehabilitation Foundation. They get right down to business x-raying 122. They find no lead fragments, which is a good sign. Chris hates to lose any condor, but he's especially concerned about this bird, one of the oldest males in the Arizona population and the offspring of the last wild condor caught in 1987. Condor 122 has produced a wild-hatched chick, only the second one in the Arizona Recovery Program. Dr. Orr will have to take 122 back to Phoenix and perform surgery to remove the rotting contents of the bird's crop. The regimen is stressful for a wild condor, and this is the second time 122 has been through it.
Unfortunately, that year that we caught him late, 119, his mate had laid an egg and was incubating it down at the south rim of the Grand Canyon. He came in to feed, and we found that he had very high levels of lead and was really debilitated, so we took him down. All the while, she's sitting at the nest waiting for him to return. So he didn't return, and she had to abandon that attempt that year, and they didn't produce that year, and that was the only year that they didn't produce. She later died of lead poisoning. So he has since repaired and produced young with another female. So we're hoping that we can get him treated and get him back out there.
3 months after 122 was captured, transported, and treated, he is cleared by Dr. Orr to return to the Vermilion Cliffs.
that's when it's most rewarding, you know. I mean, yeah, I wouldn't say you develop a relationship, but you know, you go back out to the wild and you see that bird again, and then you see it again, and you see it the next year, and you treat it the next year, and you treat it the next year, and you treat it the next year, and you think, man, if people only knew how tough these guys were. So I think my admiration and respect for the species is probably much more well defined now. Yeah, it's kind of nostalgic, I guess. You see the birds come in, you're like, hey, there's 122, you know, there's the old male. Wow, we're treating for lead again. So yeah, it's on both hands, the highs and lows of being proud that they're still out there, and yet being frustrated that they're still going through the same problems, you know.
The Vermilion Cliffs is a stark 3,000-foot escarpment of layered red sandstone. The gentle beauty and harsh ruggedness of this place reveal how the extremes of nature can flourish side by side. And so it is with the California condor. An ancient bird that had disappeared from the Arizona skies fights to reclaim a foothold in this unique land, while its only hope and greatest threat both lie in the hands of man.
While most people in southern Arizona were fighting the flames of the Monument Fire, Tom Beatty, his wife Edith, and son Tom Jr. were waging a war of a different sort. The raging inferno raced into Miller Canyon near Sierra Vista and destroyed the landscape surrounding the Beatty Guest Ranch. But it wasn't just the ranch that the Beattys were fighting to save. The Beatty Guest Ranch sits on 10 acres beyond the paved road leading up Miller Canyon, surrounded by property designated by the United States Forest Service as a wilderness area. It's a setting that allows visitors to get close to the best Mother Nature has to offer. Groups of colorful hummingbirds, spotted owls, deer, and even an extremely rare ocelot have been spotted in the surrounding area. It truly has become an international attraction for birdwatchers, scientists, and nature lovers. A central feature of this utopia is the pond. Tom Sr. knew that following the loss of vegetation, once the monsoons started, rushing rainwater would carve its own path of destruction down the mountain, eradicating their years of hard work. Enter biologists from Arizona Game and Fish and volunteers from the surrounding community. Before the rains started falling, these conservation warriors were on a rescue mission. Their quarry? Frogs. But not just any old frog.
We have the Chiricahua leopard frog here, and we have about somewhere between 350 and 500 full-grown adult frogs.
The Beatty's Pond is so prolific that Game and Fish uses their frogs to stock other areas across Arizona.
They come here once or twice a year to get frogs and tadpoles to put them in other places.
But like I said, these aren't just any old frog. So what is it that makes these frogs special?
We have a population that doesn't seem to get the fungus that's killing all the other frogs. And they've taken tadpoles to ASU and tried to introduce the fungus, and they can't. We're sort of a very unusual site for those frogs.
We don't know why, but this population of Chiricahua leopard frogs has never, we've never detected the frog chytrid fungus in this population, and so it's a really important population. It's been extremely robust and healthy since it was established, unlike a lot of our populations elsewhere in this part of the state. So it's a really important frog site for Chiricahua leopard frog recovery. Chiricahua leopard frogs are federally threatened species, and they're an important part of our ecosystem. They make up food for a lot of other animals. I mean, frogs in general are kind of like the canary in the mine shaft. They are an indicator of ecosystem health, and when you don't have an ecosystem that has frogs, it's probably somewhat out of balance. The fire is over, but the threat is not gone. The hillside burned very extensively, and there's the very high likelihood that there's going to be a lot of sediment runoff with the onset of the monsoon season, and that could bring a lot of ash flow down into these ponds that are on this property. and that could compromise the survivorship of this population of frogs. And so we're going to take a subset of these into captivity to hold through the monsoon season, during which time we can see how these ponds do.
Abby King explains how we go about catching frogs.
We're using dip nets mostly to do that. Right now, during the day, they're a little more difficult to catch. At night, they're less wary, and we can kind of blind them with our flashlight, so they're easier to catch. So I think we'll have more success at night. We're just kind of sneaking up on them. They tend to be in the lumps of vegetation that you see in the background, and catching them in the dip nets. The tadpoles that we're catching are smaller size, and they tend to be in the vegetation. And so we're just kind of dip netting the whole pond and getting what we get.
Wow.
So once we catch them in the dip net, we flip the dip net so that the frog cannot jump out. They obviously can jump very high. And once you flip it, they're kind of stuck in the net like that. And then if you carefully feel the frog, you can grab the hind leg and then gently bring it out of the net. And we can free the frog into a bucket, which we're holding them until we treat them with a prophylactic treatment. Small male. We'll be taken with us.
Dana Frederick, frog catcher extraordinaire, has her own thoughts about the process.
The pond's really slippery. I got wet all the way up to here because I fell and slipped. Just scoop the net into a clump of grass and stuff, and then you lift it up out of the water and you check, and if there's anything flopping around, you check if it's a fish or a tadpole. Most times you don't catch anything.
As darkness covered the pond, the catch rate went up.
It's easier to catch frogs at night. You know, you can shine your light at them. It kind of blinds them, and so you can sweep under and catch them pretty easily. Plus, frogs tend to be a little more active at night. They're going to be out foraging on some of the insects. They're just easier to catch at night.
Once the capturing was done, the processing started.
Well, we're taking the buckets over near the vehicles where we're going to count them out. We're going to try to determine the sex of the frogs. The adults are a little bit easier to tell than the juveniles, so we're going to separate them out, count them, and then we're going to go ahead and package them up for transport up to Phoenix. When we move frogs to new sites, we do prophylactic treatment on them to prevent the chance of spreading disease to a new site. The frogs will be moved to Glendale Community College up in Phoenix, where they're going to be housed in an enclosed facility. If the ponds do really well, there's the possibility we could either bring frogs back here to release back into the ponds, or another likely scenario is that we will use the frogs that we brought into captivity and use them to release at other sites that we have on the east and west side of the Huachuca Mountains to further augment those populations. If these ponds do okay, there's not necessarily a need to bring the frogs back here, and so these frogs will continue to do well, the ones that we're leaving behind, and so we can use the ones we have in captivity to stock at other sites.
When the fire and subsequent rains washed into Miller Canyon, Tom Sr. knew that the trees and grasses that make this a special place will regrow. While the power and devastation of the fire flow destroyed some of the picturesque features of the Beatty Guest Ranch, the true accomplishment was saving the broodstock of this amazing little frog.
The Beatties have been a huge part of the recovery of Chiricahua leopard frogs down in the Huachucas. They have been involved with Chiricahua leopard frog recovery since the late 90s, and most recently they enrolled in our statewide safe harbor agreement for Chiricahua leopard frogs. So they are continuing to do good things for frogs and Chiricahua leopard frog recovery into the future, and they've been tremendous advocates of this work, and we are really thankful for their help and their partnership.
One of my favorite things on bedfish is first thing is to realize that these fish do not eat, okay? They take out of anger, they take out of territory. It's very seldom that they actually will even eat a live crayfish when they're in this motion. It's about gender. It's kind of the male is trying to show off so that this female comes up and joins him. He needs to show that he's an alpha. He needs to pick the right spot that's near deep water. A lot of times you'll see males that'll be up real shallow and they're all over the place. I kind of look at the size of the nest. What happens is the male will come in and begin the nest. He'll dig the nest to a certain size. The female is the one that really goes in and prepares that as she wants it. That's why when you catch a big female, you'll notice that her tail's really torn up. She takes the brunt of the damage. What I like to do, again, I said I like to find locked fish. When I'm fun fishing, the locked fish is usually the one that's more territorial. He's easier to catch, okay? I can catch him within a few minutes. An unlocked fish, it may take an hour. You're gonna have some different techniques. You may try and get her angry. You may throw a swim bait up in there that challenges the territory. So I may pick up a bluegill swim bait and throw that bluegill in there, and now she thinks it's another bluegill taking over that nest or coming in maybe to eat eggs, or it's that territory challenge. A fish like this that tends to roam around that nest and not go to it as much is exceptionally tough to catch, almost impossible to catch. So you're better off when you're fun fishing to just keep rolling. Go find fish that's locked, and they're a lot easier to catch.
Well, that's our show for tonight. For more information on Arizona game and fish, or anything you've seen tonight, please go to our website. I'm Jim Paxon with producers Carol Lynde and Gary Schafer. We'll see you next week.